Well, howdy ho there, folks. How are we doing today? Hopefully, you're all doing absolutely peachy keen fantastic and feeling the loving embrace of Ma Kali and the Divine Mother in every day. So, we're going to continue here a little bit. Before we get too into the spiritual stuff, though, we're going to just do this girl. So, we gave her the unalloyed gold needle, and now she is less bad. I mean, I think losing an arm is still bad, but less bad.
Hoped to see you again.
Uh huh.
My apologies for when last we met. I fainted before I could even thank you. Everything is as you said. Since inserting the needle, the scarlet rot has ceased to writhe,
Uh huh.
and the nightmares have abated.
You know, you invaded me before and I killed you, right?
Though I can scarcely believe it myself. I can move as I please. Not that I could ever truly repay you, but I would like you to have this, by way of thanks. A token though it is.
Ooh. I don't actually even know what that does. I think this raises dexterity. Okay, I mean that's not terrible. But it raises my dexterity. Oh, because I have the ones that give me health and stuff. Okay, I think. Oh wait. Well, here, let's just replace this one. Yeah. I don't really know how much changing dexterity matters, but it's not a big deal. Anyway, today I just wanted to talk about how we should always try to keep hope alive and keep it going. Um, so I really like reading a lot of political articles, and I like keeping in touch with things, even though I generally find that discussing politics and getting really into it is almost always kind of sad. I personally think the state of politics in just pretty much the world is always not very good. But it is important to me to stay informed, and it's also important to know that, even if things are bad, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have hope for things to get better or for things to improve. And sometimes it will just depend on the scale, right? Because if you're talking about the whole world, sometimes it's very, I would say it's very difficult to imagine a situation in which all of the corruption and all of the bad things that are happening would just go away. Oh, also I killed the big dragon, so now you can just go through here. It took ages to do this, and I basically had to just basically I did kind of what I did with that one boss where I just kept running by and just like whacking a dragon once and then just having to dodge out of the way. Took ages, but I was listening to Thich Nhat Hanh and Swami Saripyananda, so it wasn't that big a deal. Anyway, yeah, so like the scale, when you talk about the scale of the world's problems, are going to be really difficult to imagine a situation in which it's just going to completely change. The internet is one thing that like I don't think I would have predicted if I was just like somebody living in like the 50s or well before that. But the internet does change things in a fundamental way where like now we can connect to people with entirely different perspectives. We have access to so much more information, and it really makes it a lot easier to see. Like for one, it makes it a lot easier to see like the level of corruption and like the scoundrels involved in a lot of the negativity around the world, and it makes it more and more clear to see, and like you can get more involved in problems that are completely foreign to you. Now, not to say that people didn't, because even in like the Victorian era, people were running around and talking about things that affected their like stock prices or other things like that in other faraway areas and things. So it's not like having it's not like the internet makes it entirely new and that people have never done those sort of like examinations of like life and the meaning and like the meaning of their decisions and like what it means in other nations, what their decisions mean, if they make any difference, if they care. But the internet does make it a lot easier to know more about like I didn't know there was one still over here. It does make it a lot easier to know like all of the difficulties facing other nations and seeing things like that. And it's like, the Palestine and Israel stuff, it really doesn't seem to me like there's going to be any solution other than maybe if the United States stops supporting Israel, and even then, I don't know if it's going to like fix it. I think that's just going to lead to a bunch of violence that might make things better in the future, but I don't really think just killing one another back and forth for ages is going to work. And I am very much on the side of Palestine far more than I could ever be for Israel. However, that's not to say that if the power structure was reversed, I don't necessarily think that Palestine would be like kind to Israel. Certainly not. And one doesn't necessarily have to say that like I blame them. I don't necessarily blame them, but at the same time, it's always better to stop violence. You know, it's like the Buddha says, hatred doesn't cease by hatred. Hatred ceases by love. And of course, ultimately for both parties, it would be better for a lot more forgiveness and to like stop doing these things. But when you look at the current state of Palestine and like the current state of Gaza, for instance, where it's basically this horrendous police state. Oh my, what? It just pushed me forward. It didn't damage me at all. That's interesting. Not 100% sure why that happened. But, it is very interesting to see. Oh, there's another ball. Oh, that one hurt. Another string ball. And so sometimes you see things on like a global scale, a state scale, etc. Now those are admittedly much more difficult to change, and they can be much more daunting tasks. And it can be a lot harder to keep hope alive when we're talking about things like that. But then you get into a much more, I think, personally important thing, which is your personal happiness and your personal satisfaction, your personal hope. Sometimes you will have to make difficult choices to keep your hope alive. Like, look, a nice job with stability is good, but if the job makes you miserable, it's probably a good idea to look for something that might make you less miserable, or to examine why you're miserable. Now, I think ultimately we can be in any situation, and with the proper training and with the proper mental dexterity, we can really take any situation and make it feel like it's not so bad. But like masters can make it so like they're happy in every situation. But there is a decent bit of difficulty in that for a lot of us, especially those of us who haven't trained as much. I find it gets easier all the time the more I try to focus on it. Honestly, it's kind of funny. One of the things that still gets me kind of going negative more than anything is just Warhammer and the current state of Games Workshop. That's silly, and I'm working on just being like, okay, just accepting it and trying to move on. Oh, hey, there's a dragon here. Can I summon my friend? That would be nice. I don't appear to be able to summon my friend. I'm just gonna keep going. Bye bye. I could maybe beat that dragon, but it's probably not worth the time. Wait, does this just run? Oh, I just ran in a big circle. That's kind of fun. Anyway, um, sometimes you really need to like examine like what are you doing and if you feel like there's no hope for your life, well, let me tell you that that's not true. People's lives change dramatically all the time. You might be amazed at how much you can change in a fairly short period of time, especially like younger folks. Like, you're seeing this and you're like under 20, or even if you're under 30, you don't think that you can't and won't change. Your life can become, oops, your life can become completely different, and there's no reason to lose hope. Sometimes you need to do. Oh, I want to fix that. Sometimes you do need to take charge for things, and you need to be willing to change your environment or change things about yourself or change the way you interact with the world. That's definitely true. Um, but there's always a chance for help, and there's always a chance for change, and there's always a chance for things to get better, and there's also always the chance for happiness because happiness truly lies within you because you are already connected to God and you're already connected to this ocean of bliss. You just don't realize it, and it takes time and effort to do that sometimes and to really get into it. And you're gonna need maybe to focus on it a little bit, but you can get to a better place that allows you to really grow and really feel like you've changed something and really feel like things are getting better for you. And I would wholeheartedly recommend trying to do that and trying to figure out where you want to be and what you're trying to do and what gives you hope. Uh, what a lot of us don't realize, especially if we're not like trying to keep mindfulness up, is that a lot of times we are our own poison. Like, for instance, the political stuff. Like, I've kind of taken a little bit of a back seat on some of that stuff because I started to realize that a lot of it just made me feel kind of like a lot of things are too insurmountable to do, which is not true. I mean, especially in my personal life, my kitty cat life. I mean, if I was allowed to go full kitty cat and bring down the eldritch abominations from beyond the stars and do all that stuff, then yeah, sure. But I'm not supposed to do that because apparently that's bad. I'm not really sure why it's bad, but apparently it's bad. Um, and you gotta be willing to like look at like for instance, something that I think a lot of us don't really think about is like, are we doom scrolling? Are we going through this stuff? Are we just like watching a bunch of negative content? Sometimes it's a good idea to step away from some of that content and that's not to say that you can't enjoy some of these things. You can't enjoy like horror movies or something like that. But sometimes if you watch like too many of them back to back, they can really kind of affect the way you see things. And some people are also just kind of naturally more negative.
Lanya,
But
oh Lanya, it's me, Dialos. Answer me, would you?
yeah, sometimes you also have stuff like this happen to you, and I wouldn't, and that's a little bit more difficult to deal with. We're gonna let the guy talk for a second to his ladies, corp friends thing. Um, Sometimes you really need to go through a storm, and sometimes you really need to go through a difficult period before you'll come out on the other side better. But you better believe that you have the ability within you to have hope and have uh, power and things like that. Like at the beginning of the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "All that we are is the result of our thoughts. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts." When a man acts with an evil thought, pain follows him like the wheel on the cart of an ox. All that we are is the result of our thoughts. It is founded on our thoughts. When a man acts with a good thought, happiness follows him like the wheel of a cart on an ox. You gotta. So some of these things is simply a matter of you need to be willing to remember that you should be acting on good things. That sometimes when you have like those moments where you're like angry at someone, yeah, it can feel good in the moment to try and act on that anger or to think about that anger. And sometimes we snap because sometimes we have difficult times. Understandable. But we need to remember that ultimately, it's like anger is a poisoned arrow with a honeyed tip. It can feel good in the moment, but it is poisoning us. It is making things worse for us, and it is making it so that worse things can happen if you do not, take care of it. And if you do, and the best option is to not let the poison get into you. Don't sit there and dwell on anger. Don't let anger rule your life. And, it always sounds silly, but like, hey, have positive thoughts. And I know it's not that simple. It's not like, okay, just be positive. That's not how that works. But oops. But what you can do is you can kind of use mindfulness to kind of notice what thoughts you're having and notice when you're going like negative. Like just try to examine your thoughts occasionally. Like, okay, am I going in through a negative spiral right now? And if you are going through a negative spiral, don't let it persist. And ooh, there's a little lag on the cat for a second. But don't let it persist, and always try to like notice when you have those thoughts, and then kind of gently push back against them, and or better yet, just let them, you know, exist, examine them, and then don't grasp onto them, don't let them spiral, because when you treat your thoughts as your own and you cling onto them, those spirals can go on for a very long time. It's a much better idea also to try and foster good thoughts and foster, like it might sound silly, but if you can really get it, like I found that even just something as simple as, thinking I smile and then smiling can just make me feel good, just make me feel nice. Thinking of like smiling at your suffering can really make things better. And, ultimately, this is kind of about hope. What we all need to realize is that, people like Thich Nhat Hanh, Swami Sarvapriyananda, Ramakrishna, all these people started with suffering in their lives. And then they overcame sometimes all their suffering, sometimes the vast majority of their suffering, whatever it will be. Ramakrishna had a bad time for a while where he was basically thought he was going crazy before, he got trained and really got things under control, and then he was this basically avatar of bliss. And we need to understand that, like, no matter where you are and how bad things seem, there is always hope, and there's always the ability for you to go into the present moment, and there's always the ability for you to go in and contemplate God and get past these things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have an untrained mind, you can just, oh, I'm going to contemplate God now and everything will be fine. But you start to like one thing you can do is you contemplate God, and you can pause and just sort of breathe in and out, and like if you have a problem, share it with God. Like in your moment, like at your shrine, or just wherever you are, just say, God, I don't understand what's going on. Why am I like this? Why is suffering happening? Well, whatever it is, and remember that phrase from Thich Nhat Hanh. I smile to my suffering. I smile to my difficulties. And if you realize that a lot of these difficulties and your lack of hope are not truly your enemy, they're just there, and we can react to them in a wide variety of ways. You can find that you're much stronger than you think you are, and that you can really get over a lot of these things. It's very important to maintain hope and remember that, like, with hope, there's always the ability to change for the future. And when you realize that there's you have time and the ability to change for the future, you can really take that hope and pin it down. Like, found your church on the rock. Don't found it on the sand. Found it on something solid. Found your desire for change uh, in the good and the hope that you have in your heart. And if you don't have hope, cultivate that hope. Do things that make it seem like change is possible. You know, don't always go in for like the big hard thing. I know this is around New Year's time, and sometimes people get these new resolutions, and sometimes like they'll go, "I'm gonna get fit," so they'll start trying to like run marathon amounts like right off the bat, and very few people could ever make that work. And the honest truth is that you're probably not one of them. Just start light. Start doing like little changes every day and see how much hope it can actually blossom. And how many nutrients you can like put into your hope flower. I'm sorry, I just imagine like a big flower popping out of my head. But it's good to foster kindness, and it's good to foster hope. You need to try and foster hope in your life. When you see that things are negative, look for what you want. What do you actually want? What is the future? And the future isn't, just like, oh man, more drudgery, which it may be more drudgery in a sense, but The future is not just like things changing, but you changing, your life getting better, and you realizing that you can react better to things around you. You can smile at things that would cause you suffering, and you can build up that hope that you've wanted for such a long time. And realize that it is there. That God is present, and that hope can cling to you and come to you at any time if you allow it and you cultivate it. Not a mean Jimmy Dean. Ow. Anyway, I hope that you're all having an absolutely wonderful day, and I hope that you can all keep hope alive. And in the future video, I might go into more specific techniques on like what you can do to foster hope and things like that. I just want to talk a little bit about hope today. Anyway, I hope that you all have an absolutely wonderful day, and I hope that you know that I love you and God loves you. And yeah, bye, love you, bye. Have a great one.